Okay, so the last of our snippets for this week looks at the first national government in the United States, which is not the constitutional system, but instead this kind of curious government, the Articles of Confederation, which wages the war of the Revolutionary War and which will remain the sitting government of the United States until 1787. And as you can kind of see from the title, Articles of Confederation, it's an unusual national government. It sees the colonies as a federated system that delegate limited powers to the national government. So the Articles Charter makes clear, and you can see right here in red, that every state retains its sovereignty unless it's expressly delegated in the Articles to the national government. It does not give a power of taxation to the national government. Instead, the war is supposed to be carried out under a system in which all of the costs will be divided up between the states, and then the Articles government will go to the various state governments and request funds to prosecute the war. This is a system that works okay during the Revolutionary War itself, but unsurprisingly, after the Revolutionary War, state governments are increasingly reluctant to cough up the money to pay for federal expenses. There is, this concern about excessive power, and so there's a rotation system. No member can serve for more than 3 years out of every six, although critically, this rotation clock doesn't begin to take effect until 1781 because you have to have the articles are not formally confirmed until that time. So a lot of the key figures within the articles government, James Madison is a particularly good example here, are allowed to serve throughout the Revolutionary War and into the post-war period, but then they are eventually kicked out. In a weird system, the articles approach is that every state has only one vote, regardless of its population or of its overall number of delegates. So the range of delegates is anywhere from two to nine in the article system. The smaller states only get two, but every state delegation gets together. They by majority vote. That becomes their one vote. And to get anything done in the articles, the Continental Congress, which is it's a unicameral system. There's no president. In the articles system, you need 9 states to vote yes. So it's a very cumbersome and quite weak governmental system, which works okay during the Revolutionary War, but again struggles thereafter. And you can kind of see this in the progression of the state capitals of the United States. So Philadelphia is the first state capital, but the Continental Congress is kicked out of that when the British invade Philadelphia in 1777. They then eventually will go to Princeton, New Jersey, Princeton University, very beautiful building, rather expensive for them. They eventually can't afford the rent. They then move to to a tavern in Trenton, New Jersey, which briefly becomes the capital of the United States. And this is the building, which is now a Wells Fargo bank in Trenton, that housed the articles system. So it's kind of a government that increasingly loses loses authority as the 1780s move onward. That said, the article's government does, despite its weaknesses and despite its really weird structure. Again, this is a government that is created out of a concern that the king was depriving the colonists of liberty. So there's a fear of an overly powerful national government. The article's government does a number of really quite impressive things. First of all, of course, it's the government that wins the war. It negotiates an alliance with the French, with the Spanish, with the Dutch. There wasn't a lot of an example of successful colonial rebellions in the late 18th century, and the articles system ultimately prevails. Secondly, the article system deals with this thorny issue that you see here on the map In the aftermath of the Revolutionary War, the original colonies, many of them claim areas to their direct west. Now, this is not so much a problem for, say, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi are directly to its west, or North Carolina, Tennessee is directly to its west. But think of some of these areas in what's now the Upper Midwest, where these are areas that are directly to the west of, say, New York and Pennsylvania and Connecticut and Massachusetts. There's a danger that the states will fall out among themselves. And the Articles of Confederation government sets up a system in which all of the original 13 states agreed to cede their western land claims to the national governments. It's a very important move to keep the country together. The result is this: this map is replaced by a system in which the pink and sort of greenish areas here become two territories: Southwest Territory and the Northwest Territory. And this is the last of the major things that the Articles system does. It passes a law called the Northwest Ordinance, which sets up a system in which these territories will be given the opportunity to join the Union as states when they have a sufficient level of population, on equal footing with the original 13 colonies. So this is a way of avoiding, remember the problem that was in the first snippet about these rotten boroughs, where these original districts had much more power than areas where you had more people in the colonial period. The Northwest Ordinance says that once you have enough people, you'll get the power. So the result is that ultimately there'll be 5 states that will be created from the Northwest Ordinance: Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Northwest Ordinance does a couple of other things. First of all, it calls for surveying all of these territories, creating a kind of surveyed chart, and ensuring that one section of every town will be withdrawn from from sort of private control, will be given to local control to be auctioned, and to have that pay for municipal expenses, including education. It's kind of path-breaking law in that respect. And then secondly, and critically, the Northwest Ordinance establishes that there will be no slavery in any of these territories. It's very unlikely that there was going to be slavery in any of these territories anyway. But the Northwest Ordinance becomes precedent-setting here, with the idea that the federal government has power to dictate whether or not slavery will be allowed in territorial areas. Keep this in the back of your mind. This is an issue that we'll be coming back to in the run-up to the Civil War. So you have these impressive accomplishments by the Articles: winning the war, securing the peace in terms of getting the states to stop fighting among themselves about land claims, and then passing this path-breaking law, the Northwest Ordinance, that establishes the principle for subsequent admission of states to the Union, including the encouragement of education, something that had been unprecedented in world history before this law. But, and this is a big but, the article system increasingly starts to break down in the mid 1780s. Internationally, there are a series of treaties that are negotiated: 1783 to end the war with the British, 1786, this treaty negotiated by John Jay, later Chief Justice, called the Jay-Gardoki Treaty with Spain. But because the federal government is so weak, the national government can't really require local Americans to adhere by the terms of these treaties. So the British and the Spanish, especially the British, start complaining about these and saying, look, if your national government can't enforce these treaties, we're gonna take it into our own hands. The British briefly occupy area of what is around what is now Detroit, Michigan, because they see the Treaty of Paris, which ended the Revolutionary War, not being enforced on the American side. So the first problem with the Articles is that the national government does not seem strong enough to deal with foreign threats. The second is that the national government doesn't seem powerful enough to deal with internal threats. This drawing is of Daniel Shays. He is the originator of this debtors' rebellion in western and central Massachusetts, called the Shays Rebellion of 1786-1787. This plaque here is from Petersham, Massachusetts, a town in central western Massachusetts, that where there's a key battle in Shays Rebellion. And this is basically a rebellion of farmers, small merchants who owed money to mostly Boston banks. The economy isn't doing great in the mid 1780s. They don't have money to pay off their debts. So they basically tell the banks, we're not going to pay, and we're going to take up arms against the federal government when the government sends in debt collectors. And there's a concern, although the Shays Rebellion eventually will be put down, that these kinds of rebellions are going to erode the fabric of the U.S. government. So by 1785, 1786, a consensus has emerged that the Articles of Confederation system is not strong enough to govern the United States. We need a new system of government. But there's a problem. And that problem is that under the Articles system, amendments can occur, but they can only occur if all 13 of the states agree to them. And one of the states, Rhode Island, makes clear that it will not agree under any terms to creating a stronger federal government. And the reason for this is that Rhode Island has figured out that they can, they can pay off their debts the old-fashioned way, basically just by printing money that's not backed by any hard currency, but assuming that these paper, the paper money would be accepted as valid because Rhode Island's a pretty small state. It's not exactly flooding the system, and Rhode Island is worried, not incorrectly, that if a new government is created, that it has a more robust federal authority, it will deny to Rhode Island this this printing press authority. So Rhode Island makes clear that they're going to block any attempt to revise the articles. The result is that a voluntary constitutional convention is conferred in late 1786, which will then gather together in Philadelphia in 1787, which we'll be looking at next week. But because the articles cannot be revised under its terms, they kind of have to go around the articles to create a new system. So basically, for our purposes here, the significance of the article system is that you have a governmental structure that proves too weak to efficiently govern the country, but does have some really significant accomplishments, especially the Northwest Ordinance. And that's it for this week in terms of our snippets.